Right. Oh, got a little bit of feedback. If you wouldn't mind muting just for now, but you're also always welcome to actually unmute and pipe up. That's the advantage of a Google Meet, and that's why we do it, because we like to talk for quite a long time actually. But today we're going to do a quick one because there's a certain football match going on a bit later that we don't want to overrun into. Okay, I don't know who they are, but anyway. Right, now I'm just going to get my notes up and I'm going to start talking. Here we go. The first part of our meetup today is about the Angular study plan, or your Angular study plan. And yeah, I'm going to basically talk about my bit and how I came to this, and then Stephen's going to have a go at that too, and then we're going to show off to you, okay? And then hopefully you'll be interested enough to want to sort of join in and see where this goes, see where this leads. Okay, I think I've got another one to admit. Hi, welcome. Right, okay, moving on. So basically, my name's Tom. I run this meetup, but that's just an aside. I'm a contractor, and one of my tasks is to help with recruitment. I do a lot of Angular technical interviews. A few months ago, I was talking to Ricky, who's actually here today. He's the client's front-end development manager, and we were talking about identifying training and study needs. Our conversation gave me an idea about possibly an open source document, a syllabus, or a graded list of topics broken down into levels, the same levels that we use for interviewing when we look at candidates. If we broke it down into those sort of sectors, it could be used as a study and a management tool. So whilst I was looking for material, I actually came across Stephen Adams' thread about his self-study plan. And yeah, here we are. We ended up collaborating. And Stephen, why are you here?
I'm here because you invited me. No, basically, yeah, so like Tom said, so a couple of weeks ago, I was watching a talk about, I think it's one of the Angular team. He was talking about how he created a plan for studying in order to get into Google. And that sort of tweaked his idea of what would a plan be for studying Angular. So I put a post into Angular Nation a couple of weeks ago about what kind of topics would we have in this plan if you were to sort of, you know, upscale from where you are, and what do you need to learn? So got a load of great responses from that, and from that I started building out a list. And my plan was to start creating a repo of all these topics and adding like sections for each topic and having this as open source. And then I started talking to Tom, and then we both got involved together working on this. And Tom's bringing his ideas into it, and I've been bringing mine into it, and we've come up with this Angular study plan project. So I'm going to share my screen, and you guys can all see where we're at now. Tom's just put the link in there as well, but I'll share the screen so you can have a look. Okay, let's just do that. Brilliant. So can you all see that? Okay, I'll take that as a
yep.
As a yes.
Yeah.
Thanks, because I can't see you guys now, so I don't know. Anyway, so here we are. Here's the study plan, and as you can see, it's a GitHub repo. So both me and Tom have been at the moment contributing to this. And if we scroll down on the README, you can see we have a long list of topics of all the different things that we think cover what you need to know as an Angular developer. So this list comes from the post that I put on Angular Nation, plus some of our own ideas. So some of these topics are from you guys as well, from Angular Nation, which is really useful. And what you can see is we've kind of tried to divide this into different categories. So we've got like, if you're just getting started in Angular, this is like the list of things that you should know to be when you're getting started. And then if you think you know all this and you're quite happy with all this information, you can move on to like the more advanced concepts, where we have things like state management, lazy loading, routing, all this information. And then from there, we've added some extra stuff, which might not be actual features of the Frame platform, but they are things that we think, to be a good Angular developer and a good developer, you should also be starting looking into. So we've got things like NGRX, NX, Jest, and some of these server-side rendering technologies as well. So we're starting to build this out. What the idea is, then each of these pages that we have will have a brief description of the topic, plus we will have some links to some of the things on Angular Nation, some articles that we might have on there. We might also have links to the courses on Angular Nation. So if, for example, if we go through the basics or we go through more advanced ones, we can have a link to the architect course that's going on right now that Bonnie's running. So we've got this basic Angular architecture section here. So in there, that might have the link to the course, so you could read about what the basics of architecture are, and then you can find out more how you can take a course on this or what else you want to do on there. And that is basically the plan at the moment. Obviously, it needs a lot of input and a lot of help from other people to build this out, but this is the start of it.
Stephen,
Tom, yes?
Yeah, do you mind if I get you to scroll down a little bit?
Sure.
Obviously, we've got at the section at the start, the beginner level, which has very few sort of items in it. And obviously, the idea is that you've got to kind of do your first plunge at your hello world application. And that's what that's really about. But the yellow icons for J, for junior, the idea is that if you're a junior developer, you should really be able to cover most of those details. And if you're a mid-level developer, you should be really looking at those kind of details. Something I wanted to zoom in on, Stephen, if I may, is I've purposely highlighted a little hack here that I thought mid-level developers might appreciate, is that interceptors, guards, directives, and pipes are not usually in high demand for a mid-level developer. Sure, you can get to do them, you can volunteer for them, but if you're a little bit weak in that area, that's cool. That's cool, because there's plenty else for you guys to have to study to sort of have that broad range of experience. So it's one of those things that you can actually go a little bit slow on. I don't know how you feel about that, Stephen, and indeed Bonnie, but I think mid-levels can actually get away with being fairly weak in those areas.
I agree. I mean, from my experience, I haven't used them that often. They don't come up in every project you may work on. Yes. But you may come across them, or you may, what I might find is come start on a project that's already been going and the previous developers or the team have already started to use interceptors, or they're using directives a lot more than I normally do. So it's something you would need to brush up on at the time you start on that project. So exactly, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Cool. Learn what's in front of you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I may, would you mind scrolling down to the bottom to the wider ecosystem? So something that I felt was quite important is that for a professional, you don't just need Angular, okay? You always need a few extra tools in your belt, okay? How much of this is really going to depend on your business need and your work role, okay? Because not every application is going to use NGRX, okay? Some of you might not even use any of these other libraries as far as state is concerned, but that's a different conversation. What I'm trying to highlight here is that these are the areas that are good to study generally. You can choose which ones kind of suit your needs, okay? But we're just trying to highlight the skill areas that they're associated with. So we've got a couple that juniors need to dip their toe into if your projects use those things, okay, and so on up through the scale, okay. Something that's getting more and more common with projects is Storybook, and although it's built in React, and I find it not very Angularish, we do have to do it, and it's an important thing that ultimately we should learn if we want to be mid-level or senior. Okay.
You're right, Tom, because things like this, I've never really looked at Storybook, but you start to see more and more people talking about it, more and more people doing presentations on it, and then what you'll find is you'll go to a project and they use it, and these things you've got to keep an eye on, because they will slowly, things will start to get more popular, and then you'll find that there is a need for it. So it's definitely a good idea to keep an idea on this wider ecosystem, as you were saying.
I see Bonnie / Angular Nation has raised her hand. So
yeah, I just wanted to mention about Storybook. We recently had the Meet the Storybook team and the Meet the Cypress team on Angular Nation, and they just did like a little quick Hello World intro if you wanted to get a free, like, quick intro to that. And then also we have the Storybook channel and the Cypress channel that are hosted by those teams, so you can go there and ask them questions if you have. They're really, really nice guys too.
And that's great, because these are the kind of the content that we could put in here for Storybook.
So it's worth mentioning that probably half of the attendees tonight have come via meetup.com. So for those of you who don't know it, maybe you need to get into Angular Nation, okay? Because a lot of these links are going to end up that way. It's probably a good point for Bonnie to drop some kind of link or something into the conversation, if you don't mind.
I will. And if you want to go sign up right now, I will wait and I will let you in right now. You just have to put in your email address and then I'll send you an invite.
Brilliant. That's really
wonderful.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom,
Thank you.
do you go through how people can start thinking about contributing, or do you want me to go into one of these sections?
Wonderful. Thank you for priming me, because I'd lost my thread. So this is good. Okay. So the thing about this project, it looks pretty damn simple, and it is. All it is a few readmes that are cross-linked. Would you mind clicking on, say, for instance, the RxJS one?
Yep, sure.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got a little document here, and it's got a few sort of tips and tricks, and basically lots of links to places where you can get started, and some deeper information on reactive programming in the section below it. Okay, the idea is that we're going to give you as many sort of curated links as we can choose, and also we want you to contribute if you're up for it, that is, of course. So we're wondering, do you have any good study links that have helped you personally to explore and learn and possibly become an expert in certain parts of Angular and its ecosystem and the wider ecosystem? Now, I'm not strictly asking you to paste into the chat, although you can, okay? You can actually just put up your hand and have a chat with us right now, or if you'd like things to start differently, perhaps you'd like to contribute to your first open source project, in which case we've got links to help you get started. Stephen, would you mind backing up and going to the top of the index page? It's basically a README of the repo. You'll see there's a link at the top of the study guide to click here to contribute. And then if you don't mind going in there, it's full instructions on how to contribute, okay? At the moment, we're not using any semantic Git commits or anything strict like that, but we might do in the future in order to help people learn about them, okay? Another thing that we're looking to do with this repo, and Bonnie has invited us very kindly to do it, is to move this repo from our little group that we created into the Angular Nation group. So we're going to go under that umbrella. So this is a big deal. And if you want your name as part of the contribution list, you can do it, and you can just follow this link right here. Okay. Any questions? I see that I'm right. We've got a few hands up.
I'll stop sharing now, so we can see.
Thank you. I've got Agent RR, would like to say something. Can I start with you?
Yes.
That's Rob.
Yeah, I'm Rob.
Hey, Rob.
Why you don't like agents?
It's very mysterious. No, I do. It's very cool. But
No,
I like Rob.
Okay, I'll use Rob from now on. So I was looking at that list, at the extended list at the bottom, and the SCSS. Actually, when you build a new project in Angular, that's SCSS is by default. So I think that's one of the things that people should learn well, because it will make your life so much easier. And as well as, it's a preprocessor. It doesn't harm anyone to learn it. The other thing is that I know that maybe when you start learning Angular, you're not looking at the big picture, but you eventually want to work in a big project, right? So I think learning NGRX is also a good item to learn, because it's going to give you a lot of insights on how to make a small application into a bigger application, because you really don't use NGRX for small application, but
Agreed.
to big to large applications, yes.
Yeah, that's an important difference, isn't it? When you're dealing with small applications, it's not a great idea.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is the RxJS. I think that everyone that is starting to learn Angular must learn RxJS, because it's like the core, library for Angular. And again, it's going to make your life so much easier as soon as you start getting into this mentality of reactive programming, that, you will be like, wow, I could have done it with reactive programming and it would have been such, like this. It's not but the finger.
You're so right. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
No. These are important words you've just made, so thank you.
Can I just jump in and mention,
Yeah, sure.
and I absolutely agree with Rob, RxJS is very important to learn. And there is a free RxJS course on Angular Nation that was written by Jan-Niklas Wortman. I can't believe it's free. I was like, are you sure you want to give it away for free? And he said, yes. And Jan-Niklas Wortman is on the RxJS core team. So he knows what he's talking about, and it's there and it's free. And there are also a bunch of RxJS episodes on NG Houston that are free. So there are free resources out there where you can learn RxJS, which I highly recommend. Sorry, I was just getting so excited because I just wanted to tell you guys about that. It's free.
It's our full intention that whilst there will be a few paid course links, and there already are some, in particular the RxJS reactive programming on by Deborah Kurata is in there. That's a plural type one. But
I love her.
I think she's pretty damn good too. I might actually talk to you about that email you sent today about getting her in for a meetup. That would be lovely.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm working on it. Yeah, we're going to talk about that actually. We'll have to talk about that.
Later.
Yeah.
Okay. So meanwhile, I think what we'd like to say is, because this is open source, we are looking for free links. We want people to sort of consider free documentation as a go-to, and also paid documentation when you want that sort of like more powerful induced study feeling. Right. So I see Deval has got his hand up. Would you mind?
From the list of, I noticed maybe it's not the right thing to put in an Angular learning, but do we not need to know about OAuth, OpenID Connect, and those parts, because 99% most of the projects do something of that sort?
That would be a great thing for like the extended ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think that's a fantastic idea. Would you mind pasting that into the chat so I can get it in the notes?
Or you can create a pull request with that in there.
That's what. Yeah, and I can paste few free resources. That's what I think is a good thing, right? To learn about it.
Yeah.
Okay, I can do that.
Thank you. That's lovely. All right. Yeah. So if we haven't got any more urgently popping up things to talk about, I think it's time that we, at Rob's request, started talking about styling. Okay. How are you feeling about that, Chris?
I'm absolutely fine. I thought we had about another 3 hours to go through each.
I could go on. I could go on. There's loads to talk about.
There's a massive list there, and I know that you and I we sort of like cherry pick some really good ones. So I think that is a really good list that you've compiled there. But yeah, if you're happy, I'm.
Well, yeah, I will do. But guys, we're not necessarily concluded. You are welcome to paste your ideas in as you read this document. So obviously, a lot of you have got it open in your browsers now. So if you've got any things that you think should be present, like topics, or if you've got links to stuff you love, you can paste those. Or more importantly, just take a note and come and contribute and get your name on that GitHub list. Okay, thank you. All right, right, it's my pleasure to introduce Chris Green, because he's my style guru. He gives me advice, and now I'm going to get some more. So go for it, mate.
Tom, is he your style guide on what you wear, or just?
No.
Okay, just
my cat's just come in. We might have a visitor. Anyway, so listen, just a quick introduction. My name's Chris Green. I've been in the business for, I won't say how many years. I've been contracting for 10. And the last 5 years, I've just concentrated purely on Angular and its ecosystem, which rightly pointed out earlier on, NGRX, RxJS, must-haves. So I've pretty much sort of just concentrated on that the last 5 years of my career. And I come from a creative background. And so pretty much this presentation is really just to help anyone that might struggle with HTML and CSS structuring. And even if you've got a wealth of experience on this, there might be some takeaways. So hopefully don't switch off early. There might be something that can help you. Yeah, so pretty much that's the intro. If I can. Okay, how are we doing? Can we see?
Yes.
Thank you, Deval. Right. Just going to save some bandwidth here. Right. So, okay. How to style your app. You must style it this way. The first slide is how to style your app. It's only one approach to style your app. So this is not like a be all and end all. This is not how it must be done. And by the way, guys, now I'm presenting, I can't actually see anything. So perhaps, Tom, if anyone raises their hand or anything, can you give me a nudge?
Absolutely. I'm happy to interrupt.
Perfect. Thank you. So yeah, so to begin, how to style your app. It's a little bit sort of open-ended, isn't it? And literally this is just going to be one approach to style your app. So there's many different ways of this. So I had to get that disclaimer out of the way early. And another disclaimer is, what will this presentation not include? So this presentation is not going to be a tutorial on CSS. It's not going to be about the best frameworks. We could go down a rabbit hole with that one. But also, it's not going to be about mixing libraries, atomic design, or a flavor of BEM called ABEM. It's not going to be about less Sass or stylus. It's going to be purely SCSS focused. Okay, so there's the disclaimers out of the way. Here's the positives. What will this presentation include? So first of all, I just want to give you, I want to start off with a demonstration of how a badly structured SCSS code can quickly get out of control. And then I'm just going to move on to a step-by-step approach, just how I've done this. And it's just bread and butter. It's pretty much repetition, everything that happens here. And this is just like the technique that I've used time and time again to refactor in templates. And hopefully there's some takeaways for some people here. But pretty much it's just going to be, so the second step in this presentation is just going to be breaking down refactoring a template into creating semantic HTML. Then we need a naming convention for your markup classes, and then structuring the SCSS so that it's scalable. And then finally, as a sort of cherry on the cake, I'm just going to throw some animations in there to help your app become a little bit slicker. Just give it that sort of, that little bit of magic on top. Okay, so that's pretty much what the presentation is. Hopefully no one's switched off by now. What will we refactor? Right, let's give you a little demo. So this is our little menu, a little splash menu with some sexy animations on there. And this is pretty much what we're going to refactor. And apologies for using a avatar of me, but I couldn't resist. Sorry about that. So this pretty much, look, I'll do it again. I'm sure there's some woos in the crowd, but anyway. So that's pretty much what we're going to refactor. There's some animations in there. It is over the top, but we'll come to that later. But I just wanted to throw everything in there so that you guys can sort of like have some takeaways with this. So let's go back to the presentation. So what will we refactor? So what I've done is I've created a profile page. If you hadn't guessed, this is our profile page here. So it's trying to sort of imitate what the business, what a common scenario in business is, in so much as that we'll have a profile page that will be made up of lots of components. Changes will need to be made, and it's how we can manage that in the beginning so that it becomes more scalable and doesn't get out of control. So initially what I've done is I've built a custom profile page, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share this link in the chat, because all of this code is all home baked. Anyone wants to reuse it. There's no license on this. It's purely home baked code. So yeah, Tom, how do I actually do the how do I share it?
If you want, you can fire the link to me via another way, via Slack or something, and I can paste it in if you're struggling. But there's because you're presenting, it's a bit more difficult because it hides the screen if you can't find it.
It does,
okay.
And I can't.
So just pop it over to me on Slack, and I'll do it.
Cool, good man. Thank you very much. So what we can do is there you go. Okay, so if you could share that on the channel. Apologies for not knowing how to do that. You got that, Tom?
I have. It's done. Okay.
Sorry, guys. So yeah. So what I've done is I've just created a profile component, and it's got lots of different components. So what I've done is I've mimicked like some asynchronous data. I've created like a little dummy service with some delays and stuff like that in, so that the data comes back asynchronously. There's a tabs component, accordion component, image loader, menu. So these are your sort of like bread and butter stuff that pretty much that you use, So what I'm going to do is, this is the page where we're going to start off. So we've still got some animations in there. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to disable them. So you've seen the goodness, you've seen all with the flashy animations and stuff, and now we're just going to start bland vanilla code. Okay, so let's move that out of the way. Right, so initially we have like a profile component, and kind of looks good, it's like, everything looks sweet, it's all responsive, very, very little you can sort of say about that. It looks great. Everyone's happy with that. You can go and look at the code. And by the way, in the code, what I've done underneath profile, there's containers here, and this A, B, C, D to H is the sequence that we're going to take throughout this presentation. So this one that we're looking at now is the initial profile. So this is like, when dinosaurs began. This is the first cut. Okay. So this is what I see so much in my profession. Like, this is what I see so regularly with different, you know, I've worked with many different clients, and this is what I see. So it looks great, you know. To be honest, can't really complain. It's like really lean, you know. You've got like, you know, some sort of, you know, responsive libraries in there, and you've got a few classes and stuff like that, and yeah, it looks great. And then look at the CSS, you know, again, it's a work of art. Fantastic, you know, no problems there. So everything goes through code review, and it goes in, and yeah, you know, it seems there's no problem there. Then what happens is this, commonly, is that the product owner says, do you know what? Let me just show you this. The product owner says, look, we've got these, and bear in mind that this is like a really, really simple use case, okay? But hopefully you can sort of scale this up to like more complicated examples, but like this is in its sort of like bare bones. This is like what I find is a repeating thing that happens like within templates. So they'll sort of say, the product owner will say, well, we've got so much real estate over here. Let's just move these social icons over here. Let's put a line in there, and let's justify this text. So it's like, yeah, great, let's do that. So in true Blue Peter style, probably nobody remembers Blue Peter except for me, but anyway, so revise profile. We go into the revised one. We've got all of our changes in there. Everyone's happy. Management are patting themselves on the back. They've got a successful release. They're all like drinking brandy and smoking cigars. All the developers are eating pizza. There might even be a little rainbow that appears over the development center. It's fantastic. Everyone's happy. But then if we look at what's happened in the code, what you'll generally see is that the template hasn't really changed much. If you're sharp eye, you'll sort of see, you know, a few little classes and things like that have tripped in, but it still looks okay. But then when you go to the CSS, you'll start to see it starts to go horribly wrong. So you've got like, you know, what I tend to find quite a lot is that you'll get developers coming in and just playing with, let me get this word right, specificity. I hope I've nailed that. Specificity. So you'll just get like constant patching. And if you bear in mind that that was just literally to move those icons, put a line in there and write justify. So if you can consider the changes that might happen over, you know, 6 to 12 months even, you know, this can become horrific. So pretty much that's what I see quite a lot, in so much as that, you know, we've got, if we look in here, the divs, we've got like the old classic wrapper, you know, we've got stuff in it, and it looks great in the beginning, but we can see that it just doesn't scale very well. And this is a classic, you know, with the HTML. So there was our common evolution of a template. You've got like the initial version and the revised version, and we can see what's happened to the CSS already. It's you know, it's become messy. So what's the solution? Is it refactor or patch? And to be honest, you know, in a beautiful world, we'd refactor everything, but it's not practical most of the time. Most of the time, we have to apply a patch. You know, it's depending on you know what the time constraints are. But if we have the opportunity, it will save so much money for the client in the long run if we put good architecture in. Okay, so I'd say that if we do have the opportunity, if you can just budget that little bit of extra time, convince the client, convince your employer that, you know, refactoring is going to save the money in the long run, and it truly will. So really, this pitch is to sort of say, look, you know, if we can put in some better architecture in the beginning or refactor, it's going to be much more maintainable and much more scalable. Okay, so the refactoring steps, this is like my bread and butter stuff. This is what what I've done for a long time now, in front end development. But pretty much sometimes you've just got to like strip everything away and start again, and that it might seem a bit drastic, but honestly, if you can build a house with strong foundations, everything else will just like be solid once you've got that strong foundations. So again, I apologize like if this might seem a little bit sort of ABC for the people listening here, but sometimes it's really helpful to actually visualize things. And like if we look at the next one here, what I've got is I've just got a tree diagram, and again I'm just going to reiterate that this is like a really simple use case example, but in the real world you'll have something much more complex. But I believe that this pattern, this like workflow, will give you a much better result than just sort of like, oh, let's just create a class, let's just like stuff this here, or hang on, this doesn't, let's put like margin 30 to fix it and stuff like that. So this is our tree diagram. So create a nested tree diagram of your page structure, and then create a semantic HTML structure from your tree nodes. So I think it's really important for us to like be using semantic HTML that actually describes the data. If we look back at our initial profile, we've got divs. I see this all day long, but I feel that it's really important now that we've got to think about accessibility and screen readers and things like this, that we make an effort at the early stages to make everything semantic HTML. Okay, so there's like our sort of, you can do this in your head or you can write it down, but I think it's really useful to sort of just get clear in your head how, template that you're designing, how it's going to look. So we've got like some nice semantics here, and we've just put placeholders in here for the components because we're not even worried about that. What we want to do is we want to just get the framework working first. Okay, so so the next step, we've got all our semantics, we've got our structure, we've got our nesting correct. So the next step is we want to define a naming convention for our HTML and element class names. Okay, so this is like Marmite. You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. Everyone knows Marmite, but here we go. Why do we actually? Sorry, one step. Why do we need the naming convention? We need a naming convention, in my opinion, but you can do without it. But I think that this gives us more structure in it. It makes it more consistent across an application if we can have a HTML SCSS structure naming convention. So introducing BEM. So this is the Marmite. That's what the M stands for, Marmite. Of course, it doesn't. It stands for like block element modifier. So again, apologies, like, a lot of people will already know this naming convention. And I did sort of like raise something earlier on that there's different flavors of BEM called like ABEM, which is for atomic design, but that's outside of the scope of this presentation. But I think that like with Angular and the way that the components are written, it really lends itself very, very well to some like beautiful SCSS and also some consistent naming structure within your application. Okay, so what BEM is, it's a class naming standard, and it's an acronym for block element modifier. Right, it's really complicated. It can be explained on one slide. Here's your fast track, right? So blocks are the highest level, so you'd have a header, that's your block. A block can have many elements. You might have logo, you might have links, you might have like, I don't know, lots of things in the logo, but they would be your elements. And the naming convention between a block and an element is to do a double underscore, okay? And then some elements can have a modifier, so you might have a large logo and you might have a small logo. they would be defined as header double underscore logo dash dash large, header double underscore logo dash dash small. Okay, and the thing with this is that, like with the point earlier on that we use semantic HTML to describe our data, now we have a class naming system which is describing our data and the hierarchy. So we've added some value here, right? But the downside is, and anyone that knows BEM will be nodding, BEM can be very, well, I put there little, but I'm going to say it can be very verbose, especially with modifiers, but we'll put that aside for the moment. Okay, so there's some positives and there's some negatives with using BEM. Okay, so but let's go for it. Let's use BEM in our refactor. Okay, hang on, my cat's just come in, so excuse me, she just jumped on the screen and ruins everything. But so this is called flattened BEM. Okay, now I'm going to come in a moment. I'm going to come onto some like different examples of BEM. And
Chris, Dav has got his hand up. He'd like to interrupt.
Yep.
Why is it called flattened BEM? What is flattened?
It's called flattened BEM because, well, there is, I think there's another name called, it's like called grandchild or something like that, but it's called flattened BEM for this reason. And thank you for picking this up. Is that, do you know what, Dav, can I come on to this in a second? Because there's your answer in this one here.
Okay.
Yeah, right. So what we're going to do, no, in fact, I'm going to answer it now. Flattened BEM is like literally you just have your you have your block here, which commonly you could use as your component name. Okay, so that could be your block, and then it's your double underscore, and then you've got your elements within that. But you'll see I'm nesting here. So I'm nesting, but I'm still keeping it a child of the parent block. And that's why it's called flattened BEM, Dav. Okay. So it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter how many levels you go deep, right? You just flatten it, right? But the thing is that wouldn't really add much value, because imagine you had 20 levels deep. I hope you wouldn't, but like the break point is 3. Okay. So as long as we're like within 3 here, okay, we can just flatten this. And that's why it's called flattened BEM. So you'll see that now we've got like our elements just all sitting underneath our block. Okay, and then if we look at our SCSS, sorry, what we've got is we've just got this really nice way of like structuring SCSS, you know. So that what we can do is, because this is like a compiled language, we can extend it with the ampersand, and we can just basically, you know, we can just pretty much put all of our placeholders in here. In fact, we don't need some of them. We don't need some of them. But it, like, what it encourages is that when a developer comes along, right, and they say, you know, like header, you know, margin 30 or whatever. It's much easier to pick that up in pull requests, because you know that if this is like an adopted pattern that you're using, then you can, hang on a sec, sorry, come on. You can pick this up much quicker in pull requests. Quite often in pull requests, you'll just have like the differences in code. And quite often people will just see a bit of CSS and they go, yeah, you know, whatever. And then look at like, you know, the patterns within like Angular, and they'll like, you know, just sort of say, yeah, that's fine. But that's when you get into this like patching specificity like type problem. So this is like a really nice way of just having your block here, and then everything must be a direct descendant of your block. But as long as it's like no more than 3 levels nesting deep. Okay, this is like the next one. When you read the BEM documentation, it's not friendly, in my opinion. it's a bit hardcore, but like, and it seems to be there's lots of different interpretations, but this is the classic that I find that, you sort of say, you start with a client and they say, right, okay, we're using BEM naming conventions in our classes. And so somebody goes away and they read the manual, and then like they create a template, and this is what they do. So what they do is they just sort of like nest everything, and then, and this is not scalable, because it just tightly couples everything. Because if you wanted to sort of like have, like a wrapper in here, you'd need to sort of like then add it in here, and so it's not good to tightly couple them like this. So I think for like the under 3 levels deep, that's fine, but this is a common mistake with people when they first start writing BEM. Okay, there is this is the your go-to for if you have more than 3 levels nesting. Okay, so what you do is like just keep everything simple, so that you've got like 3 levels deep nesting, and then if you need to go over 3, you just redefine a new block. Okay, and that's BEM. There's so many smoke and mirrors with this. There are some, like, some. I think there's somebody's got a hand up there.
Yeah, it's Devargin.
Oh, here he is.
So what you're thinking? So, but you mentioned, Chris, right, that you don't need to include the hierarchy in the naming. So in this particular example, what is stopping me from naming these individual divs, right? So education, schools, education, qualification, to just name as profile underscore features underscore education underscore schools underscore qualification underscore courses.
Nothing.
Why?
You can do it like that. You can do it like that. But the thing is if you think about it, Dav, right? Look how much we've got there, right? And it's like, well, what's the point in like implementing a BEM structure if we do that? Because you might as well just give them like single class names and we'd just be done with it. But it's just like a way of us separate. If perhaps looking at the SCSS here, we can look here, and we've now got an extracted thing at root there, and it just makes it a little bit more. You can sort of understand the components a little bit more. It's a good point. It's a good, fantastic question. But like, if we didn't do something like that, what's the point really? Because we just got one block, and then we've got 50, direct children underneath it.
Understood. That's great.
Yeah,
thanks.
That's generally right. That is your fast track to BEM, right? Honestly, I've seen it misused, and I think, do you know what? I think that's one of the reasons that BEM isn't fully adopted in a lot of companies. Well, forget about if anyone does know BEM, they'll know about the modifiers and how horrific they can be, but we'll just gloss over that for now. But like, this is, in my opinion, this is like a really nice way of us just putting some structure in there. We can break it, and there's nothing's going to go wrong. We could misname stuff. Nothing's going to go wrong. But at least it when we think we've got all of these like CLIs for creating NGRX actions and things like that, we've got really nothing here. We're in this. Thankfully, all of our creativity in writing code still lies in being able to mess up SCSS. With like all of our creativity has been removed, because it's like everything's structured now, and everything is like sort of really strict patterns. But thankfully, CSS is where we can really make it awful. So like, this is just like something there'll be something in the future that handles this problem. But in the interim, this is just a scalable pattern that you could perhaps put into your code, just to sort of help you there.
Here goes Deval again.
One last question. Sorry, one last question. So this education underscore schools underscore qualification underscore courses, they are linked to a separate block called education. So from SCSS point of view, they don't fall under dot profile in the class hierarchy. It's a separate block outside of dot profile, correct?
Like this is where like the rules are, there are no rules, right? In so much as there's guidelines how to do this. Now, personally, I think a good guideline is that you keep the profile education. Okay, you could call that XXX whatever, you know, you could do this. I can't highlight in there. You could do that. So it's not that you have to use this name here. But the thing is that like I tend to, and like I say, this is an unwritten rule, right? This is not written anywhere. I've found that this works quite well. That what you do is you use these for like structural things. So you would have like, you know, display flex and things like that. So underneath here, if we looked underneath here, you could have what's called profile education. That's what I love that. So what we've got is we've got profile education. So what you could have under here is, okay, and in here, I think it's not what the way I've found that is, you know, you could have like your structural type stuff in there, you know, and then within it, or you know, rather than having it here. Do you see what I'm saying? Because they're both the same. So I kind of like keeping that in, but you don't really need that, and you don't need that. That's nice and simple, and that's all good. Okay, that's perfectly valid.
Chris, we've got a hand up, and I'm proxying another hand up. So
okay,
should we say Pav? Do you want to go first?
Hey Pav. Pavel, I'm not sure you got your mic muted.
No, my questions have been answered already. So I'm all good.
I thought it was.
So it was Pavel.
Pavel.
Yeah. Do you want to have a go?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry, apologies. I just want to ask, instead of a div, could you add another section and just a section within a section for education?
Yeah. So pretty much like if you had like, you know, you could have like div class equals, what you would do, you would just sort of say education, you know, teachers. Yeah, so you would still use flattened Ben. You would still flatten it. Sorry, that's I haven't put a little dash in there. Yeah. So you would still flatten it, but then if you went 3 levels deep, you'd want to redefine it again.
Okay.
What's your thoughts on that?
Sorry, is that question to me?
Yeah. I to put it this way, it's like, you know, I'm saying that in my experience working with BEM, that there's a lot of interpretation of how it can be used. And what I'm trying to do here is today is just say this is one way that we can use it. Okay, I think the 3 levels deep is quite a common thing for developers to recognize. Okay, but it really is like this is just one method that I've found. At least we can create a pattern that people know the rules and they can stick to it. But it's not to say that it's right or wrong.
Chris, when you say 3 levels, you mean when you go approach that level, we create another block and all elements within that are linked to that particular block, like you have done with education underscore schools.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. Correct.
Hey, Chris, I've got one other question for you.
Yeah.
Carlos has asked, what do you think about frameworks like Tailwind's CSS or Tachyons?
I've kind of like put a caveat at the beginning of the presentation that I didn't want to sort of get into like the I didn't want to get drawn into this because there's so many. It depends. It depends. Is that, and that's not going to be an answer that's going to like, you know, quench anyone's thirst. It really depends. Like all of these libraries are good in certain circumstances. And they can be used really effectively in different ways. I'm not a big fan of like you know, styles for classes, classes for styles, and things like this. But I'll be honest with you, I haven't got experience of that library, but I kind of know where it's coming from, and I don't really want to. I can't really sort of go down that rabbit hole at the moment, because it really depends, like how, you know, what the size of your application is, and like how you want to like you know, structure things. How big is it, like an enterprise system? You know, how many developers are working on things, and it's an open-ended question. But
agreed. And also, I mean, like you said at the beginning, you're presenting one strategy, aren't you? So
exactly.
So it's a fair question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a perfectly fair question, and thank you for that. But like I say, I don't want to go down that route at the moment, just because this is just like one way of using like BEM and just trying to put some structure in there with that. But it's not to invalidate that there's some fantastic libraries out there that can support, you know, how you write classes. So yeah, thank you for that.
Carlos says thanks. So cheers.
You're welcome. Thanks, Carlos.
And just to interrupt you one more time, I see Rob, or Agent RR, would like to speak.
Hey, Rob.
Hey, hi. Tom, I know you laugh because yours is 007 as well, right? So, yeah, Chris. So what are your thoughts about inline styles when you are doing, I know that it's a no-no, but sometimes they like require sometimes to like force the actual CSS to be some kind of importance instead of you putting importance inside the CSS class structure?
I mean, this is, you know, we can't do that. Like, I understand about, like, you know, the importance and the, you're going to draw me into this word again, specificity. I just get,
I can't even say it myself.
I get drawn into it every time.
Specificity.
I'm going to call it hierarchy from here on, right? And like, you know, look, that's in my opinion. Well, I think I might have some backup here, but like, it's best to like keep your rules all in one place. So keep your rules within the SCSS. Don't distribute. This is why I'm a big fan of not having classes within the template that define styles. This, and I feel that it's the way forward is to create, like, you know, SAS mixins. I'm going off on a tangent here, but anyway, I think that, like, don't use inline styles. My advice would be, it's not to say don't do it, but people's eyes might bleed. Inline styles, it gets around the hierarchy problem, but it's not best practice. Okay, the best practice would be to bring it into your template and use a higher node for the hierarchy override. Did I get away with that?
Twice. Yes, I got you. No. I was just trying to pick your brain, because
yeah,
I see that a lot of my colleagues, they use inline CSS, and I keep telling them that they should be putting it in the class. But you know,
yeah, it's a big, like, I'd really love to do another talk on this, because to be honest, it's a small thing, but it's like really quite an important thing, that, like, you know, classes for styles and styles for classes, it's gone through so many fashions of, like, you know, so many iterations of development, that particular, you know, it was fashionable to sort of like have classes for styles, and then it was but I think the inline styling thing, we've got to say that's a big no-no.
Right. Thank you.
Cool.
Also, that should be a good segue to say that, I mean, you should learn CSS really well, you know, while learning Angular, because after all, everyone just sees the front end, and if your front end doesn't look good or, you know, nice, I mean, people are not going to be drawn to your application.
Amen. Amen. You've just basically summarized the last slide on the presentation there, because quite often, like, I come from a creative background, and I have to, like, just praise what you just said there, that, like, so many times, like, I think that what's happened is that where we've got all these SPAs that have come into like, into existence now. We've got like Java developers, we've got C# developers, and then we've got like the creative people, and like we've all sort of met in the middle here. And I see so much like, in fact, there's a little bit of contempt, when it comes to CSS, and it's just CSS, it's simple sort of thing, But like, really, I'm 100% with you there. Is that we can have all these beautiful Angular patterns. We can have our facades. We can have like, all of this, these NX library patterns and things like that. But if at the end of the day, if it's clunky for the user, for the end customer to use, and it's not pretty, can I say that? It's not competing with what's out there. So I think like, we need to adopt that as well, that we've got to make we've got to be front end developers. We've got to consider the front end, So I'm 100% with that.
Thanks.
Right. So I knew I'd get tracked down
it was bound to happen at some point.
I knew I'd get like a honey trap in when I started going into BEM. I knew it. So if I can just sort of get back on track, they're the three things with BEM, right? So that I would advise a really nice way is to just use flattened BEM. So and this is going to deal with like 80–90% of your components. Pretty much that's 80–90% of your components. And some people out there, they might be thinking, well, do you know what? What's the difference in just doing that? Like this guy don't know what he's talking about. Like what's the difference in just doing that? Yeah, you can do that, but they're like, it will give you a very nice structure in here, which will resist temptation for people to just tag stuff on at the end in pull requests. And there's another advantage as well. If you look in here, right, if you had, and bear in mind, this is a really simple application. If you go in here and you just inspect the element, right, you can come in here and you can look at, in fact, no, you can't see it here because this is the revised one. If we look at the fantastic refactored profile, this is really where the rainbow sets over the development center, Ricky. So here you'll see, look, when you're inspecting it, you know exactly where that's coming from. So there's another really nice beneficial thing for that. You can just go through and you can actually see and inspect, and which component or that's coming from. So there's a few things, but naming consistencies, is really important, because otherwise, why would we have any naming convention at all? It's just like, best practice and stuff. So yeah, did I get away with that? Apply BEM to our refactor.
You did. Let's go for the gold.
God, I'm going. Right. So here's our BEM refactor. We've got our profile. We've got our sidebar. We've got all of our flattened BEM. It's looked fantastic, even if I say so myself. I'm gonna know. There's all of that in there. So look, apologies if this is ABC stuff, right? But I'm going to cover this because this is the way that I've done stuff, and I get complimented that I'm quite accurate with the way that I present templates. So this is my secret sauce. Basically, it's really simple. You just like make a wireframe out of it, and you just put like Gary colors in there. Now it might seem like child's play to you, but honestly, the amount of times I see a design something get rejected from the design department because they say this bit here should be 30 pixels, right? But it's only 20. And then what you have is like somebody puts 10 on the profile image and 10 on the menu links to make that 30. And it looks great, and it goes through code review, and it's all fantastic. And even though this might seem really like child's play, it's really useful to do this because you can see exactly how your template is responding. And by the way, the whole thing of this like refactor was that when the product owner sort of comes in and they say, oh, it's fantastic, you know, we've got all of our buttons like on the right hand side here, and like it was meant to sort of be that like, yeah, but when you get like responsive like that, they ping down, they ping down to the bottom there. We don't want them there, we want them up here. And so that was like how normally it's presented. They sort of say, look, you know, all you've got to do is just move these social icons up here. It's really simple, should take you 5 minutes. And then what it is that you then have this sort of like dilemma that you go in there and you look at like all of the code and you look at the CSS that's been patched, and you say, well, is it a 5-minute job or is it a refactor? So I missed that little bit of the presentation out. But like pretty much, if we look at the wireframe layout, what you'll see those icons now sit on top, and this is how I would do it. Like, it might seem ABC, and I'm sorry if it insults anyone in the audience, but it really just works, you know, because you get these colored blocks, and of course you're going to leave them in for production because, you know, design don't know what they're talking about, and like, you know, it just helps you understand how, you know, everything is working. So that's our layout, that's our flattened BEM, there's all of our gotchas, our wireframe layout, and then we come to the sort of like ta-da, sorry. Yeah, so let's have a look. So what we then got is our refactor profile. There it is. And all this stuff here, that's all asynchronous data just loading. Hopefully your APIs are a little bit better than that, but there you go. So refresh, and it's all really nice and clunky, and we love it. But you know what? This is how a lot of systems want their data to be represented. You know, they just want to like open up an accordion and it opens up really like harsh like that. But just to sort of like give you some, you know, give you some love on this presentation, that, you know, it doesn't have to be like that. What I've got is a service somewhere. I'll plunk it all in. Now, I'm not going to like go into like the ins and outs of how Angular animations work, but you can see that kind of looks pretty sexy. You know, when you think of Angular, you just think it's like really stodgy and not creative at all. But it can be amazingly creative. You can be amazingly creative within Angular. But the first thing is, when you discover Angular animations, the first thing you want to do is just like put it on everything, right? So here you are, like, you know, working. It's like 10:30 at night. You know, you're still working away because you're just like in love, and you just think this is just like amazing. You know, this is just like the best thing. Like I'm just going to be like, you know, so popular from this. And then you start refreshing it a few times, and you think, yeah, it's brilliant. And you're still sort of like, you know, biased that it's brilliant. And then you go back to the menu, and then you've got the animation there, and that's brilliant. Yeah. Then you go back to your profile, and then, oh, hang on a minute, and then it's animating again. And you go back to your menu, oh, hang on a minute, and then all of a sudden you start to get seasick, you know. So what I've done is I've thrown in everything for you, right, so that you can deconstruct this this application, and you can look at these tabs. You know, look at the sexy way that they fade in and fade out. Look at this. If anyone's used like accordions, they'll know like the max height 999 pixels problem. Angular animations, no more. There it is. It's all goodness in there. I can go into a dialogue and explain how it all works, but I think pretty much like going on the back of like our you know, the courses and your what you need to do with Angular, I think some of the best ways you can learn is by breaking something, and then you understand how it works. So break this application and then understand how it works. And just like, but if anyone's got any questions, or they're, you know, don't understand how it, there's a contact in the app that you can contact me, and I'll gladly help anyone at all, no problem. But these are just like some you know, some components that pretty much are sort of bread and butter stuff with like some nice little bits of animation, you know, in there. But when it comes to like all of like, you know, your you know, these sort of, it's just too much. It's just too, less is more when it comes to animation. But I want to show you something that just to sort of like, hang on, where am I doing on my slide? I've nearly finished, Tom. I know I'm waffling on a lot. So the do's and don'ts of using BEM, I've done that. Create a working wireframe, complete your refactor, make your app slicker. Here we go. Right. So the one thing that I think is a really, really nice feature, right, for any application that uses Angular is this. Right. So now I've said it, where is it? Right. So in here, I've got animations. Now what I've got, now look, this is all the code that I've written for you that you can take away and you can analyze, you can have a look at, and obviously there's any questions you have, I can, but like at the moment, I've got this page and elements. I'm not going to go into like the ins and outs of it, but you see it goes down, up, da, 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 and it's really sexy, but it's way over the top, right? But watch this one. This is a little one I've called fade in and out, especially for you guys. All right, watch this. Fresh. Ooh, look at that fade in and out. Right, refactor profile. Actually, we go, yeah, just fades in. See that? See how it fades in. Now, the thing is that like with a lot of applications, like there might be some complex HTML structures that take like 20, 30 milliseconds to build, and you'll see jank. You'll see like blocks like building very quickly. And this is a really nice little hack to just cover it up and make your app look sexy. And if there's one Angular animation that I'll vote for, next election, I'm voting for fade in, fade out.
Yeah, it gets my vote too.
So anyway, look, that's pretty much like the end of the presentation. Summary, it would be just be consistent about your HTML and your SCSS across your app. I think it's important that HTML should describe the data. In other words, using like semantic HTML, section, A side, headers, things like that, footers. And please, you know, BEM, like I said earlier on, is like either you're going to love it or hate it. You know, in the UK, we have something called Marmite, and it's like you either love it or hate it. So it's kind of like your Marmite thing, BEM. But I think it's important to have a naming convention, and BEM is one that's out there. And you know, I've given you a flavour of how you can use it. And I think the most important thing is that if you do adopt this sort of like standard, is to be really strict in pull requests to maintain those standards, so that you don't get people like adding on bits of CSS into a structure so that they override the hierarchy. And yeah, and the point that was raised earlier on, this is it. Remember that front-end development should be about visual presentation just as much as it is about Angular code patterns, to make it visually appealing, but don't overdo it. So pretty much, I think that's it.
Well done. I just before we sort of sign off, does anybody have any questions for Chris? I've got one, if I may, whilst we're having a think about that. Do you have a link to your presentation? Because you've got a load of notes in there that are really useful.
I don't.
Okay, well, that's okay. I've just pasted. I've just pasted the link to our little notes and comments website. Okay, for the meetup, and I normally update that in 24 hours. So if you've got a method, Chris, of sharing that document however you want to, or just even extracting the instructions, then we could go with that. Okay.
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, no
Do-
problem.
Would you mind stopping presenting so we can just sort out the end of this? That's lovely. Has anybody got any questions? Oh, Agent RR, as Rob has raised his hand again. Go for it.
Yeah, sorry. Do you have like some kind of document that to best use the different HTML structures? Because I am a fault as this as well. I mostly use divs, maybe the occasional, list, or maybe anchors and things like that. But section, tabs, none of those things barely touch.
Yeah.
Do you have any?
I'll tell you, what I can do is I can actually amend the project, and I can just put. But pretty much, it's just really just like looking at the new CSS3 structures that are available, and just really just again, they can be used in a variety of ways, but certainly I can put a link in there to direct you to some info, certainly.
Thank you.
And I see Jayant has got his hand up as well.
Hi, Chris. Hi. Really cool presentation.
Thanks,
I just wanted to ask, like, in some organizations, like particularly mine, we don't have such structure and we don't follow this. So how do you think that we can go about pitching for refactoring it, and how long do you think it would take?
Yeah, I don't think that you could. That's a really great question, by the way. Really good question. Like, I don't think that you can just sort of go into your manager on Monday and just say, "Listen, this guy, he like just done it. This is the way we've got to go." I think that like you could implement it slowly. Just on a case by case basis. Just each template as you come. If you chose to do that, I think trying to refactor lots of templates. I don't think that any companies can sort of buy into that, because there's no real they don't see the value immediately, so I think if you wanted to sort of implement it, it would just sort of be try and implement little bits at a time,
So smuggle it in.
I think
All right.
I think the way Angular does the styling, it hides, so you can always do on one component and it won't impact everything else. So you can still do it without fear of impacting your global styles or anything of that sort. So if we were to do it on an existing project which doesn't follow BEM, we can just do it without the fear of spoiling anything else, like if other components, because the styles are encapsulated within that component itself.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you so much.
I see Bonnie has her hand up.
Yeah,
I just had a comment. Well, I want to comment that it was a really good presentation and it was a good discussion. So thank you, Chris.
thank you.
But I also wanted to comment because a couple people were asking multiple questions and apologizing and saying, I'm sorry for asking so many questions. And I want you to stop that, because I think, and I'm sure that Tom and Chris would probably agree with me, that the questions actually make it for a much better discussion.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to add that. Deval asked a couple of questions and then he said, I'm sorry, I have another question. But I was like, but they're good questions.
Well,
don't say you're sorry.
Bonnie, yeah, I did actually tease him, which probably prompted him to do that. But I can't help myself. I like teasing Deval.
But it's an affectionate teasing, though.
It was. I hope he understands that.
Yeah. I don't take it personally.
They're good questions. Very good discussion.
Cool. I'm wondering if, guys, maybe we could do a microphones open, slow clap, round of applause. Nice one, Chris.
Great.
Marvelous. Has anybody else got any questions about any of the stuff we've talked about tonight? Because we're going to wrap this up before 7:30, so you guys can go and watch the football if you're so inclined.
One question for Angular Nation, Tom. I was trying to register and there is a spinner which is kept on spinning and it's not going forward. So I entered my email address, my personal details, and then I click next and it's still stuck on that screen. Is there anything, or should I just try again?
If you want to put your email address in the chat, then I will send you an invite manually. You
Okay,
just
I'll
have
do
to
that.
risk everyone else in this chat having your email address. You never
That's
know what's
okay.
going to happen.
It's okay.
You could get a lot of emails, so be careful.
I just sent you that email in the chat.
I'll send you an invite right now.
Thanks, Bon.
Okay.
Anybody else want to get into Angular Nation while we've got Bonnie here? Because it becomes a lot easier when you've got an administrator on hand.
Yeah, everyone should join. Angular Nation is the best.
Aw, thanks,
Robert?
Rob.
Oh, sweet talking, Rob.
I've been hooked.
All right, we've got another +1 from Jayant. Good one. Oh, keep coming. All right. So I think we're heading towards that time where we can wrap this up. I want to thank, in reverse order, Chris Green for giving us a delightful talk on styling. I learned something. I won't admit what, it was most of it. And thank you to Stephen Adams, firstly for collaborating with me, and secondly for doing this lovely presentation. All right, appreciate it. And thank you, everybody who's turned up today, dared to have your cameras on. You proud lot. Well done, and hope your team wins tonight. Okay.
Team tonight. Good.
All right.
Thanks, Tom.
All the best, and see you around. We'll be in touch because now we've got your email. You're going to get bombarded by meetup requests. Okay. Cheers. Have a good night.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Cheers.